Okay. Okay, so the essence of what I'm going to kind of talk to you about today is from a workshop I did last year with a man called Ben Crystal. Ben Crystal is a very awesome guy. He and his father is a professor, are kind of go-to experts on Elizabethan language. And they have a glossary, which is the kind of, for an actor, the kind of go-to glossary to get the meaning and so forth of.
Sorry to interrupt, did you set the camera?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Go-to glossary of kind of the language, and also they are both the experts in original pronunciation. So one of the things, as Mr. Randall talked about original pronunciation, he has. There's a lot of stuff in the language that we don't get in our modern way of delivering it because of the words have changed. Very simply, over time, it always happens. But so not only are they experts in original pronunciation, they're experts in kind of the language itself. Ben Crystal is a young actor as well and director, and he's very talented. He's got some fantastic TED Talks. So all you have to do is just search Ben Crystal, and you'll find out a lot of this kind of information. But he also, there's a book in the library that he's written called Shakespeare on Toast. I don't know if anyone's read that. Yeah. It's a book written about really complex ideas made really simple, and that's kind of what this is hopefully going to do. So, as an English teacher myself, having taught English for many years myself, English and drama and the way we teach Shakespeare is very different because, of course, in drama, we're performing it. And we, in English, often forget that. And so what I'm going to teach you today is an exercise that Ben Crystal taught me and some others, from an actor's perspective. Okay, how to analyse text from an actor's perspective. That's what you might think, oh, that's all good and well, but I'm not acting it. But what I'm going to teach you here, hopefully, is something that you can take away and look at how we analyse the text. We can look at a whole bunch of interesting things like thoughts and so forth. And it's all on the page, it's all there in front of you. One of the most awesome things that Shakespeare ever did, obviously, is considered to be Hamlet. Written in 1599. It's basically, I think it's the second most written about book after the Bible. Like it shows, the kind of the thoughts, the criticism, the kind of the worth of it is amazing, and it's considered to be like the icon of Elizabethan theatre. This is the play that stands out above all others. All right, and you might think, okay, yay, good, but why? Okay, and there's reasons for it, and I'll go into that in a little bit. And I'm not 100% sure what Mr. Randall has covered with you. I know that I have heaps of conversations with him, and especially about kind of stuff like this, and then he might pass some of it on. But if I'm going down the same track that he's gone down, just do tell me, okay? And don't be afraid to put your hand up and interrupt. What we're looking at here is, if you ask anyone, to quote Shakespeare's anything, this is possibly one of the first things that comes into mind. So we're going to look at the to be or not to be speech. Shakespeare, of course, was an actor before he was a playwright. So he knows how to act, or he knows what an actor has to do. He is so clever as a playwright because he tells you exactly how to act his words. Okay? And this, kind of when, if you think about before the kind of prevalence of the printing press, everything's handwritten. You're not going to be handwriting a whole text. Here's your text for playing this part, here's one, and so forth. That when you do write something and give it to an actor, it has to have the guts to it, to have all the meaning in it, and so forth, all right? So, having said that, there are obvious indications when, like things like when to move, take my hand, I kiss your hand, or something, obviously those little simple things. But have you looked at rhythm and structure? I mean, you obviously have before, but we all know, kind of in Elizabethan theatre, it's written iambic pentameter, there's a structure to it. Now this is kind of clever to a point, because it's just the thing that they were doing, but it also helps a number of different things. Anyone know why iambic pentameter is a useful meter to use? No? Okay. It's meant to mimic the heartbeat. Okay? So whenever you learn iambic, 5 feet, unstressed, stressed, it's always dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. Right? Simple. Right? This isn't rocket science. You've probably heard that before, but it's maybe gone over your head, I don't know. But it's meant to kind of match in an artificial way closely to the human rhythms of speech. Now, obviously, you don't go around your day and rhyme, with your friends when you talk and end every, just before you leave a room, use a rhyming couplet and then go, anything like that. But this is obviously a structure that was useful because it is meant to mimic closely that human speech. But what we also know is we learn in patterns, don't we? So the pattern of the words is really important in that rhythm, and so forth. Right, so what I'm going to get you to do, is I would like you on your page to rule, you can do it, that's probably easier on the left-hand side here, a grid, okay? And I want that grid to be, to have 5 columns, okay? So it goes like, it's going to be really bad, all the way down next to the text. Oops, hang on. Okay. Yep. All good? Give you a little moment to do that. Have we done that? Yes? No?
No,
Nodding?
yes.
Nodding's good. Okay. Okay, so I've just written up here, iambic pentameter, 5 iambs equals 10 syllables. So there's 5 feet, 2 syllables each, and so therefore an iambic pentameter line has 10 syllables. Okay? I'm kind of presuming by year 13 you would have known that or been taught that before, or it should be second it should be good knowledge for you already. Okay, why have I written that up there and why am I interested in that? Well, okay, I said that the language is written as closely to resemble the human heartbeat, okay? And what we're going to look at doing here is a couple of things in a minute. As I said, to kind of look at, from an actor's perspective, what we can learn from these words here. But I just want to do something a little bit first, and I don't know if Mr. Randall's talked to you about this, but this is something that I've recently learned about Hamlet. I read a lot about Shakespeare, and a lot of the time I'm reading the same stuff, but I still keep reading, and I'm always amazed. Every book I read, there's something new that I learn, and so forth. Shakespeare wasn't an original guy. he wasn't at all original in what he did. He very rarely actually did anything new in his plays. He took source material and just rewrote it. But he was just really good at it and made it a lot better. If you think in your head, the equivalent to a modern sense today, that Shakespeare is like a Hollywood screenwriter. He takes a story, that's the screenwriter this would be if he was living today, turns it into a major feature film screenplay, and then it becomes the most popular blockbuster of the year, or whatever, or wins an Academy Award or whatever. Okay? That's what he did. So I was really interested to learn that the first Hamlet, or version of the story of Hamlet, comes from the 12th century. All right? By a person called Saxo Grammaticus, great name, who wrote of the legendary Danish revenger Amleth. And that's printed in Latin eventually in 1514. And the story is very simple. Amlet's uncle kills his father, marries Amlet's mother. To avenge his father's death, he averts attention to himself and acts mad and speaks nonsense. Then a beautiful woman is sent to kind of discover why he's acting in this way, and so forth. Basically the list goes on, and it's exactly the same as Hamlet that we know. All right, and I kind of went, well, that's kind of interesting. I know that other stories, Romeo and Juliet, for instance, had been around for centuries before Shakespeare had a go at it. And in fact, in Shakespeare's day, other playwrights, Ben Jonson, Christopher Marlowe, had produced Hamlets as well. They weren't that popular. They were popular enough to stage and so forth. But that's what kind of did my head in. I was thinking, hang on, then why is this one so important? Why is it so great? Why is it suddenly, become in 1599 and then not, from once it's from when it's written? How did it end up being so incredibly revered? And if you do the whole play, it's about 4.5 hours. It's a massive play. It's an undertaking. And think about that. Also in the Elizabethan time, they had no interval. That's a long time to see a play without going out to the toilet or whatever. But there's one thing that I've just learned recently, and I've told Mr. Randall this, so I'm not sure if he's passed this on, but there are two things that make this Hamlet different to the others. Two things. Does anyone have an idea of what they are? No? I didn't at all.
Hamlet died?
Sorry?
Hamlet died?
No. Hamlet, in the original dies. In the original does he die? No, he doesn't die in the original, but in all the ones after that he does.
Okay.
So the actual plot and storyline and everything is all very, very similar. There's like in all of the different ones. Very few of them survive, so it's quite hard to compare them completely. However, he does have two things that are different, and it's to do with the revenge tragedy, because that's what Hamlet is a revenge tragedy. We know from the beginning, of course, he finds out from the ghost that his father was murdered. And so the whole play is about getting revenge. Okay? Now that's an outward action, isn't it? That's, I've got to kill him, I'm going to go down there, stab, or whatever it is that you do. Hurrah, I've avenged my father's death. However, what makes this play different is something that that Shakespeare was working on in 1599, and he's slowly developing it from a little bit beforehand. The two things are he adds soliloquies, strong soliloquies, okay? But that's not unusual. There were soliloquies in other productions of this, or other plays, and Julius Caesar, which was written in the same year, and Henry V likewise have these soliloquies of a similar style, but not quite as rich as in Hamlet. There's a difference, because what happens here is that Hamlet, instead of being an outward action of revenge, everything becomes inner action. So instead of it being a revenge tragedy with outward action, it's an internal struggle that Hamlet goes through before he can, to get that revenge on his father's father's murder. So Hamlet is, we have suddenly soliloquies that are self-aware, as opposed to this is the situation, my uncle killed my dad, I better go punch him in the head and stab him or something. It becomes, what should I do internally? The psychology behind his action becomes inner, not outer. All right? So the thing is, he's influenced at this time by a new literary form for the English, and that's what we would consider today called the personal essay. This is something I've only just recently learned about, and this is kind of, to me, fascinating. Especially by a man that he would have had access to called William Cornwallis. Now, don't worry about ever trying to read his stuff or anything, it's not particularly going to be that enlightening. But William Cornwallis was influenced from Montaigne, a French writer who's kind of like famous for his essays, but they weren't really interested in the English. The English were not really interested in them until a little bit later on in the 17th century. But it seems that Shakespeare had access to Cornwallis or possibly translated Montaigne. And what's interesting about that is that when you write an essay, and this is, as I said, a new kind of form, you're looking at looking inward to yourself, reflecting on your thoughts and your ideas, and then writing your conclusion, aren't you? So that hasn't been in literature or writing of the time up towards that time in England, and it's suddenly, well, not suddenly, it starts to come through slowly. Now, obviously, Shakespeare gets in on the game and goes, "Well, this is actually really interesting," and then starts adapting that thought process to his plays. So, looking instead of going, it's about the action, it's about the inward self-reflection of the characters. So although there are hints of this type of stuff in some of the other plays, this inward reflection, it's not as strong as until he gets to 1599, writing Henry V, Julius Caesar, and obviously Hamlet. Now this fascinated me because it seems so simple that that could be the reason, and that then linked back to what I'm about to look at here. And this is the kind of nuts and bolts of it here, with what I'm going to talk to you about. What I'm going to get you to do in a second is write down all of the syllable counts for each line. So I want you to put 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 across your grid there, please.
As a header.
Yep, as a header. Okay? But before we go on to start counting, because I know that you will be wanting to do that straight away, now I've got you to do that, we're going to go through, and one thing that we always do when we look at script, as an actor, is you're looking for the thoughts, to break down the script into units of thought. So basically to work out the thought pattern of the speech in this case. So what I'm going to get you to do, and you can help me with this, is we're going to break it into the thoughts. Now, how do we know a thought?
Full stop.
There's a full stop, or
A question mark or an exclamation mark.
hang on. Full stop, question mark, exclamation mark. I'll get rid of the commas because that's just annoying. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is, if we look at the first bit here and we look at it and go, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing them, to die, to sleep no more, and to sleep, to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. There's a question mark. All right? So that's the first thought. Woohoo! So just put I kind of put like a break in the line, but then to show which direction that ends from. I mean, you can do what you like there, but that's it. Okay, so where's the next one, do you think, ending?
After wish.
So 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. Yep, so we go under there, there's a full stop, isn't there? Okay, and then the next one?
After
pause.
After pause. So the next one says, to die, to sleep perchance, to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. Okay. And what about the next one? Bodkin. So the next one says, there's the respect that makes calamity of so long life, for who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the poor man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Okay. Next one.
That we know not of.
Okay, that we know not of. Okay, who would these fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Okay.
And then
Now, yep, sorry.
And then after Ophelia? Ophelia?
Action.
No, we got the next one is action. Down here. Now we're gonna kind of leave the last two lines there, because the fair Ophelia, nymph in the horizons be all my sinners remembered, is basically in stage direction. Here comes Ophelia. Okay, and the rest of the speech is linked together. That last bit is more about, well, here comes Ophelia. All right. Now, how many thoughts do we have?
6.
No, if we ignore the last lines. Okay. So 6 thoughts. Yep. How many are questions? How many are exclamations? And how many are complete thoughts with a full stop?
2 questions, the rest are full stop.
Okay, so we don't have any
Exclamation.
exclamations.
Mm.
All right, so that firstly, before we even start looking at any meaning in the speech, we look at the information we've got in front of us. We've got 2 questions. We've got 4 complete thoughts. Now, what does that suggest to you if there are 2 questions and 4 complete thoughts?
I think 2 questions is quite a lot of questions.
Agree? Yes? No? You can make noise. You've got a speech that has 2 questions and 4 complete thoughts.
I think it means he's got 4 things to say, but still he's,
Could you say he's exploring something?
yeah.
He's
Yep.
sort of like answering himself as he goes with the question.
He is, yep. So we'll just put that he's exploring something. Exploring topic. We'll keep this really simple. We're not going to go into the meaning of this just yet. That's what I'm saying, like that topic or exploring something. There's no explanations, as I said. Now, do you know about caesura?
No.
You should do, because I taught you it.
Okay. I do.
Okay, a caesura is a...
Oh, I do. It's when there's a stop in a sentence in the middle of the line.
Okay, so I'll put that in the middle of a line of poetry. What do you notice about where our sentences, our thoughts end?
Only one ends at the end of the line.
Only one ends at the end of a line. Okay? So what does that suggest about the thought pattern that we've got over here?
They're quite linked in...
Because every time there is a caesura, it's a new thought. Now if it's in the middle of a line, that indicates something. Anyone want to have a guess at what that could possibly mean?
I think it means it's quite fluid, like all his.
Lots of different like ideas.
He's got lots of ideas. He's interrupting himself with his ideas. If he was, what did you just say before? It was,
Kind of flowing.
if it was flowing, he would get, it would be end stop, end stop, end stop, end stop,
Okay.
end stop. Okay, because he'd be comfortable in what he's doing. All right. But he's interrupting himself. Now this again kind of links through to this exploring the topic, isn't it? Doesn't it? Okay, so if he's interrupting himself, he's having a thought process kind of organically going as he's going along. Now, there's one thing we note as well as a good Shakespearean monologue often has "oh" in it. Oh, this too solid flesh, depending on which version or whatever. It's not an emotive speech.
There's no O in the shade.
No. You know, with Lear, was it Lear? I can't remember if it's Lear who goes, oh, about 3 or 4 times in one of his speeches. This is not emotive. Now, what have you always thought or been told about this speech? What does it mean?
Whether he's gonna commit suicide.
Whether or not he's going to kill himself. All agree with that? Yep.
Although,
Would you think, if that is the case, there might be a few O's in there? If he is thinking about killing himself, there surely should be a, oh, I don't know if I want to do it, you know, or whatever. But what we're seeing here is none of that emotion, no exclamations. So therefore, is it an emotive speech about him trying to kill himself? Well, let's see.
not emotive.
What I want you to do is to break down each thought and just reduce it to, you know, kind of what he's talking about in each thought. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the first one, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take aims against the sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. What does that mean? Now, I'm purposefully not putting emotion into it and reading it in that way. I want this simplistic. Look at the words on the page. What can you tell me? Is he, in that question, what's he thinking?
With motive to suffer or to go against the state of
Anyone want to have a...
Is it like better to like suffer through like I don't know, like bad luck or something? Like
Yeah, part of it. Let's look at the to be or not to be. Is he saying, I want to kill myself, I don't want to kill myself? Or is he going, what's the point? What's the point of all this? Okay? So, can I say existence? Because basically, there's lots of good but bad stuff that happens, yeah? And I can sleep. That would be good. Now, the second thing we think about is, who's he talking to?
the audience.
Yes, he's talking to the audience. Now, this is something that often is missed or not gone into much detail in an English classroom. I know from experience myself, forgetting to kind of do this as well. But the audience in an Elizabethan play, Shakespearean play, is a character. Okay? So when a character comes out and does a soliloquy or an aside, they directly speak to the audience. Why is that? Anyone want to hazard a guess?
They're serving the audience?
Nope. It's very simplistic. It's a very simplistic idea, yeah.
Like delivering a message.
That they might be doing, but no. It's even simpler than that. Again, let's think about what your knowledge of, and what would it be like going to an Elizabethan play.
It was just the style of the time. They didn't have
It is the style, but there's a reason for it. It's really simplistic.
To like
You'll kick
explain
yourself.
as
Nope.
Is it just to keep them engaged?
Nope. Give up? Yep. Have I stumped you? Yep.
It's just easier to talk to someone rather than like at them.
No. When are the plays performed?
At night?
Nope.
During the day?
During the day. It's light. When you come out on stage at the Globe Theatre, during the day, you see every single person in the audience. You see everyone yawning. I know that from experience because I've performed on that stage. But you see, not the original, I'm not that old. But every single audience member you can see the eye contact with. Okay, so when they come out, they speak to the audience. There is no lighting in the Elizabethan time. And if you come out onto the front of the thrust stage, you have a head, so I drop it down there, by your foot. You have 3 tiers of people in the galleries, in almost a 270 degree, almost in the round, of people looking at you that you are intimately talking to, that you can see their reaction. So they become like a character in the play. Now, if we look at this speech here, and he's delivering that to people, how does that change that from that original thought of you guys thinking, oh, he's going to kill himself? What's he doing here, do you think? Do you think he's maybe possibly
Giving them insight into what he's
giving them insight? Kind of, do you think friends tell each other that they're going to kill each other and mean it? Like, look, I'm going to kill myself, and then, go off and kill yourself? Or do you think they're discussing the possibilities?
Yeah, it's a discussion.
Right. So he's using the audience as his best friends here. Friends, I'll say plural because there's 2,500 or whatever of them. And therefore, he's, talking intimate thoughts to his friends. If we use that in friends, in inverted commas, that audience. All right? So, what's the point of this stuff? If there's all this bad stuff, why do we have to go through with it? Let's look at the second second thought. Let's summarize that. It's a complete sentence, and so therefore a complete thought. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. What's he talking about?
What is a consummation?
Someone want to Google it?
Oh, isn't it like after marriage, like the...
When you consummate something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming together and officially.
Yeah.
Yep. What's devoutly wanting to be wished here?
Death?
Is it death?
Don't know.
Should we come back to that? Yep, we'll come back to that in a minute. The next one, to die to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub, for in the sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. What's he talking about there? To die, obviously, once you die, then what? What happens after death? To sleep perchance to dream, aye, there's rub, for in the sleep of death, what dreams may come? When we've shuffled off this mortal coil, when we're dead and we're gone, must give us pause. We've got to think about it. We don't know what happens. What does happen after death? Have a look at the next one. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long a life, for who would bear the whips and scorns of time, and the oppressor's wrong, the poor man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the lawless delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietest make with a bare bodkin. What's this list? He's got a list.
The pains of life.
You know, there's all of this stuff that he's going through here. Who would put up with all the hassles of life? Question again, there. If you live a long life, that's just a long life of hassles. All right? Then we look at the next one. Who would these fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. Again, a complete thought. What's he talking about there?
Why would we go through all this unless it was because we're afraid of what happens after death?
Yep, we're getting there. We have no idea what happens, so why would we risk it? Yeah? Can you see that? The dread of something after death. We don't know. So what is that? The undiscovered country. The afterlife is undiscovered. No traveller has returned from the afterlife. Okay? We don't know what happens after death. But no one's returned. The conscience, this is the next one, does make cowards of us all, and thus the nature hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with a pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment, with this regard their currents turn away and lose the name of action. What happens in that last bit?
He scorns.
He's saying because of what we have no idea of what happens after death, what do? Instead of killing ourselves.
We lose
So
the
think
name
about,
of
thus
action.
conscience does make cowards of us all. What do we do since we don't know what happens after death with these thoughts of, well, it's better to die?
We live.
We live. We become cowards. We go, it's easier to live because we have no idea what's going to happen after. All right? So this nature stops us from the action of killing ourselves. So this unknowing stops us acting to kill ourselves. Pretty simple. We agree? We disagree?
Yeah.
Yep.
But
So if he
what
does
does
good.
it mean by this loose, the name of action? Like, what does loose mean there? Like, we don't
Lose the name of action.
do it? Oh, okay.
So we don't act because out of the coward nature of not knowing what happens afterwards. We lose that bravado of we're going to kill ourselves and because it's so much better to sleep per chance to dream.
Right.
Right? Okay. Now we can come back to 2 in a minute. We'll come back now actually since we've done that. As I said, the last couple of lines there is basically, here comes Ophelia, who all my sins remembered because she's hot. Basically, we can simplify that. Can we go back to that second thought there? 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. What is he wishing there? What does he wish? If we go back to that first one, what's the point of existence? All that bad stuff and so forth. What's he wishing for?
Not to have to do it.
He wants the bad stuff to go away. All be dealt with. Okay, so there we've got 6 thoughts. Does that change your view of what you've initially thought of his intention in this speech?
Yeah.
Right, so we're discussing existence rather than whether I'm going to kill myself. Okay? There's no emotive exclamations. There's no, oh, I want to die. There's a thought pattern. Now, here's the exercise I want you to do. Go through here, and I would like you to put a cross, please, for how many syllables are in each line. Okay, you can use your fingers for this, I don't mind. So let's have a look at the first one. To be or not to be, that is the question. How many syllables do we have?
11?
Do we agree?
Yeah.
Yep, 11. Okay, so in line with that line, put a little cross there. Now, hang on a second, but we have iambic pentameter. It's got 10 syllables. What? Okay, well there's differences. There are reasons for this. Okay, and this is the kind of nuts and bolts of looking at the meter here. What we're going to look at is the irregular nature of the speech. Where is it regular? Where is it irregular? Okay? Now, as I said, Shakespeare did everything to include as much acting advice as he possibly could. So go through and have a look at plotting that graph, please, and see what you come up with. Now, there may be a little bit of difference. Some words in their modern way may have 2 syllables or 1 syllable now compared to how they're pronounced in the original Elizabethan time. I'm not too concerned with that. We can, but just give it a good go. You can say things out loud if you want as well. You guys are so quiet. Except for Sophie.
Can you say natural is 2 syllables? Natural.
Yep. Just while you're doing that, I've got another handout that I'm going to give you in a minute. That I haven't printed out yet, so I'll just do that and I'll be back in a second.
It's quite 2 syllables or 1? One. We only have yeah.
Shrika is coil 2 syllables or 1?
Can't really answer.
He's gonna watch it. He's gonna watch it.
It's not gonna help us.
Shrika is coil 2 syllables or 1?
Coil.
Coil.
That is
It's-
machine.
When we have shuffled off, it's also coil. Well, I know he was saying.
Wow. If you get like a miracle for you,
How are we going? Have we done it?
No.
We do need to get through to get all of them done for this to work. Anyone having any issues with any of the lines?
Is coil 2 syllables or 1?
Coiled,
Coil.
coil. It could be one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be one.
Yeah.
Which line is that?
When we shuffled off this morsel coil.
Yep, I would probably say that's one.
Would lower, W-A, no, L-A-W-E-S, is that one or two?
Laws.
Laws, so.
Just one. As I said, it is a little bit trickier because we do speak differently nowadays in our pronunciation.
So when it's just like when this one comes before you, is it like
Very well.
dispersed?
Oh, dispersed. So here you've got a contraction, and that's to fit the meters, so the stress goes on the right syllable. So you have dispersed. It's dispersed.
Okay.
So it's just that kind of clipped in the way that so then it fits in the meter differently.
Wait,
So that could be dispersed.
yeah, so this one's dispersed.
Yeah, dispersed.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many syllables does devoutly have and how many syllables does wish have?
Again, wish is contracted, so it's not
One,
wish.
But that's
Did.
three.
It's not wish did.
Yeah.
It's wish.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that would be one.
3, 4,
Devoutly to be wished would be 6. To die to sleep 10.
How many syllables is quietus make? Quiet, like when he himself might is quietus make. When he himself might is quietus. Oh, what about traveler? Is that a phrase?
Oh, traveler or traveler?
Yeah.
I haven't got any of those. Where's your-
I got one now.
Alright, the quietus.
The quietest one, yeah.
Yeah, I know that the that is
I've got 10. Is that right?
So have you done? If you've got there, most of you should be having something that looks a bit like this. Okay, and as I said, there may be a couple that we have a little bit of an issue over because of the way that we pronounce them or whatever. But as I said, it's not too major in doing it. So most of you finished? Yes? Okay, so as I said before, and the focus of what I'm trying to get to you here is looking at the text from an actor's perspective. Okay, so we've analysed the text through the thoughts. All right? We've simplified them here to give us a bit of a kind of basic sense of what we're looking at. We've worked out there's 2 questions, there's 4 complete thoughts, so he's exploring a topic of some sort. Now that's obviously he's exploring, to be or not to be his existence. we've got a lot of stopping in the middle of the line, so he's interrupting himself. So he's coming up with these thoughts as he's going. Okay, so we've already thought that, and it's not an emotive speech. There's no O's, there's no exclamations. So let's then, what do you call it when you join up the graph?
Do a line.
Do a, what do you call it?
Connect.
Connect your lines, your crosses, sorry. Like so. Very pretty. Now, going back to this, iambic pentameter. It's meant to match the human heartbeat.
Wow.
So therefore, 10 is regular. 10 is calm. 10 is that idea of I'm sure of myself. So would you, ladies and gentlemen, turn your paper that way round to see how the heartbeat of this speech works. Now, if we look at this, and he's at 11, so calm is 10, right? And we kick into 11 straight away. What can we say about this? He's addled by these thoughts. There's, he's thinking about these. Now, when your heartbeat goes faster, what happens to your speech generally? It goes quicker, doesn't it? Now, so we're looking at, looking at the rhythm and meter, if we're looking at an iambic line is meant to represent that kind of heartbeat and so forth, that you're now trying to push 11 syllables into a space that has 10, that normally has 10. So if you're looking at an idea, that gives you an idea of how fast to speak it. Now, how often is this speech spoken in the pace, especially this first line? Have you seen like a film version or whatever of this? How is the speech often spoken?
Slowly.
To be, or not, to be, all this stuff. And it goes on, and the speech can be like 4 hours long itself. But this is saying it's heightened. Have a look at this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, is heightened. And then he questions himself, and he goes down to 9. So what's he doing towards the end of that first thought? He slows down as he's contemplating what he's saying. Okay? Then the next, mine are a little bit out of the line next, this is so small unfortunately. But then you have the next two, and by opposing them to die to sleep no more and to sleep to say we end, goes to 10, doesn't it? There. So therefore, he calms. Because he has that thought of, well, maybe death is the option there. He calms down from this thought of, oh my God, what should I do? Existence. Maybe death. Is he going, I'm going to stab myself right now? No. He's just thinking, hang on a second, that's a possibility. Yes. It then goes back up to 11 with the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. Now you have a look at suddenly when he has the next ones that are in the 10s here. He says to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us. Off this mortal coil. Then he says, must give us pause. And what do you notice about the line of must give us pause?
Very slow.
It's down to 8. So we're missing 2 beats. Where do we put those 2 beats?
After pause.
After pause. So that tells the actor, can you please pause for 2 beats, at least? All right? We've got to have pause because he's got to think about the next thought. All right? So, again, if we have that idea of it being regular, 10 syllables long, he's trying to jam 11 into these ones. That means he's going to be speaking faster. And then he's going to take 10 syllables to deliver those 8 syllables in that line. Again, that indication, you've got to pause. Okay? Again, for the actor, here's how you do it. All right? Then, we've got the, there's a respect that makes calamity of so long a life, for who would bear the whips and scorns of times, the oppressor's wrong, the poor man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the laws, etc. What do you notice about the meter then? What happens there?
It goes up, down.
Up and down. So what can we suggest happens there? What's happening to his thought pattern?
It's going in and out of being sure and
He's-
not sure.
Yeah, these thoughts are jumping in on each other, and some of them are good, or some of them are comforting, and then others aren't. Okay? So that emotion suddenly starts swinging a bit through those lines. Then you get down to, you know, again, that's a question, isn't it? So the meter kind of like goes all over the place when he's questioning himself, or questioning this idea. Then we get to who would these fathers bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, and what happens to the meter?
It goes down to 10.
It
Steady.
becomes steady, regular, calm. Is this a man wanting to kill himself? With a calm heartbeat? No, it's not. But he's contemplating. The fact is that we do not know what happens after death. It's a fact. There's no question about it. We don't know. No one has come back from the afterlife and went, oh, guess what? It rocks, or whatever. Or it doesn't, or whatever. There's no one's ever done that. And that's a fact. So that's regular 10-syllable lines. All right? Then we get down here where he goes, thus conscience does make us cowards of us all, and thus the nature hue of resolution is, and we start to bounce around again, don't we? Damn it, I'm not going to do this because I'm a coward. The thought of not knowing what happens afterwards becomes that kind of force that stops me from that action of doing it. All right? Now remember, he's talking to the audience, he's talking to his friend here. So what's in essence he's saying to his friends here in front of him?
We're cowards.
We're cowards, but we don't know. So we're going to live on. All right? Does that seem quite simplistic? The little heartbeat stuff? Yeah? Okay? So, oh, that's the wrong way up. It's meant to be that way. So the idea here is, as I said, from an actor's perspective, given the speech, that's what Shakespeare's telling you as an actor to do. When we read it differently though, don't we? Because we're not delivering it. And often when we're in an English classroom, we don't often deliver the text or get up and act it out or anything like that. We may watch a video or something, but that's a really good way of having a bit of a way to kind of deconstruct some of the speeches. Now this can work all the way through a text. All right? Give you an example.
So does it not go below X?
I can do. Yeah, but that's again, you go, why? Why is there any? Yeah, exactly, okay? And you know that from when you're reading the text and you see a line that's broken, where one character says half the line and the next character says the other line, whether they interlap was whether or not you have the syllables overlap, or whether they're straight after each other, or there's a gap, and so forth. So it's looking at it and going, okay, how is it written? How's the meter, and so forth. But there's a few buts to this. I'm going to give you a little bit of an indication as well. How many of you know Macbeth? Well-ish?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Macbeth, in the first half of the play, what do you think the meter of his language is like?
12.
Like, do you think everything's full on? Like, yeah?
Yeah, almost.
I think it's like
I think he's
it would be
contemplating.
like calm, like two.
Right.
And
It's
then-
all over the shop. Okay, so it's totally irregular. He has 13s, he has probably a 7 or 8, and he has a 9, and then 10s. He's all over the shop. Why? Because he's struggling to work out whether or not to act and kill the king, and then, of course, whether or not he's done right. However, when he becomes king, and what happens? What's the next thing?
Then
What starts happening to him?
he like starts seeing
He starts seeing Banquo's ghost. He starts killing people. Everything's going wrong.
his wife.
One of my favourite lines, I don't know why, is the horses begin to eat each other. It's night when it should be day. Things are going wrong. What's interesting enough, he goes, this idea that he goes crazy in the second half, and he goes mad. He should all be irregular, shouldn't he? It's not. It standardizes. So what happens is, Shakespeare said he knows exactly what he's doing. He's doing a Trump. Doing crazy things with focus. Okay? He knows exactly... Yeah, don't quote me on that. But... I'm trying to be good today. But yeah, he basically... He goes from being absolutely, kind of all over the shop. I don't know what to do. Because he goes, yes, I'm going to kill the king. Oh, no, I'm not. Okay, so his meter shows that. And then in the second half, when he is, I'm king, I'm going to do everything to stop anyone trying to stop me from being king, trying to kill me, that's when his meter becomes regular. He is totally sure of what he has to do in his position. Okay, so that's one example. Second example is Romeo and Juliet. We know Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah.
Okay. What is Romeo doing the first time we meet him in the play? Does anyone remember?
Building.
Feeling sad.
Not building.
Feeling
Yeah.
sad.
Building. What are you, Chippy?
Feeling sad about this other girl who rejected him.
Yeah. But he's doing something in particular.
Biting his nails.
No, he's not biting his nails. He's under the sycamore trees when Benvolio finds him and says, "We're not in the, where you been? You weren't in this fray or something or other." He's writing poetry to Rosaline, his unrequited love. Now, do we know what happens when Romeo and Juliet first meet?
Oh,
They
shop the. What was that? They were at
Do we know?
dinner.
There's the dinner thing. Yeah, they're at the party. But what happens is he gives the first half of a sonnet, and her reply is the second half of a sonnet. So their meeting is a complete sonnet. Right? Now, we have the hierarchy of structure. This is something that I wasn't going to go into, but I will. So looking at the language, the hierarchy of structure, at the bottom is prose, so just lines of prose. Then we better that by having verse. The intricate nature of rhyming verse is above that. And then the fully formed sonnet is above that, so then we get to song. Now we'll just not think about song at the moment, but the highest form, therefore, of that writing, the cleverness, the intricacy, is the sonnet. So when Romeo and Juliet meet and form in their language a sonnet, what does that suggest about the love that they have?
Pure.
It's
amazing.
pure. Okay? So even though they are 13 and 16 or 17 and spend two days together before they die, and cause all this chaos and so forth, we can look at their love and go, it's totally true, because when they meet, it is poetry. Okay? And again, this idea of them fitting so closely together because their language is linked in such a high form of that writing. Okay? Heightens their connection, and so forth. Now, of course, a Elizabethan sonnet, iambic pentameter, they're totally calm with one another when they meet, because each of the lines that they speak has 10 syllables. Okay? And it's in that wonderful sonnet structure. So looking at this stuff, hopefully you have given, hopefully it's something new that you've learnt, and it is useful, obviously, as an actor. It's a goldmine for an actor. There is a problem though, this is the golden age. Hamlet is the golden age where he just perfects it. As I said, he works on it, and then Shakespeare was never one to rest on his laurels. So after the play, he continues doing these. So the great plays written after this, of course, are Othello, and so forth. Sorry? Macbeth. Yes, all there's after I can't remember off the top of my head. I was going to write a list, but I forgot. But the great plays and so forth. where he uses these and carries on this inward look for the characters. Okay? But he then starts mucking around and going, well, let's just play around even more. So at the moment, I'm directing Merry Wives of Windsor. And man, the meter is just all over the shop on that sucker. That is just, he's trying a whole bunch of different stuff in there by the time he gets to the later plays. And then of course, when we go into what we call the problem plays, the Winter's Tale, Measure for Measure, the Tempest, etc., Merchant of Venice, he is again experimenting. And that's one thing Shakespeare did a lot, is experiment. He knew how to act, he knew actors, he knew his audience, he knew the environment in which he was putting these plays on, and he experimented all the way through. And there are things that change also when they move from the big outdoor theatres into the more private indoor theatres like the Blackfriars. So this is a good example. As I said, when you get to some of the later plays, it's a little harder to get it as clear as this, but give it a go on another speech and see what you come up with. Yep? I thought this could be interesting as well, so I also printed you out, I don't know if any of you have seen this before. It's an example of the bad quarto, good quarto, and first folio of the speech. And if you know anything about Shakespeare's works being published and so forth, the ownership of a play was not the playwrights. They sold it, once they'd written it, they sold it to an acting company, and it becomes the property of the acting company. Now, if that acting company gave it to somebody else for a while, and they went off to a printing house, and they printed it, the author got nothing, the playwright got nothing, because they didn't own it. And there was no copyright. So we get these examples of when Shakespeare's alive, these quartos that are done, some of them with parts of the play, some of them with people just filling in bits. Other people in that's possibly even the printers making stuff up, we don't know necessarily. There's a whole another world of study that you can do. Then we have the ones that are considered the good quartos, or the ones that are more likely to be close to the play, and then of course the first folio, which is produced after Shakespeare's death by the acting company themselves. That's where we get the majority of what we have as the plays that we know now. But if you have a look, there are 3 versions of the to be or not to be speech there. They are all different, and this is why Shakespeare is contested so much about his authorship, about what actual edition you should use when you're performing it or studying it, and so forth. So why you'll also get different editions that are very significantly different at times. And we're lucky we live in an era now where they can just run a lot of this through a computer and work out the kind of, who's written what and where they come from and all of that type of stuff. As I said, that's a whole different avenue to go down if you're interested. That's a wormhole you won't come back from in a long time. But yeah, have a look at that. That's just of interest sake. I thought you might want to have a look at the difference of those. Again, which would change all of this that we're saying, because the thoughts are different, the meter is different in some of them, some of the lines and words, all of that type of stuff. Yep. Cool. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something there. Yeah.